I am Christina Baker Kline, and I'm here with Aspen Words, which is a part of the Aspen Institute. So I often get asked the question about when I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I find it a really difficult one to answer because there's sort of no moment. And I think the best way for me to answer the question is to say that I think most children are artistic. Most children want to create. They draw from an early age. They sound out words. They're obsessed with poetry and children's books and stories, songs. They play musical instruments or they bang on things from a young age. And I think eventually a lot of people, some age out, and a lot of people are sort of discouraged from imagining that they might be able to have a life that is somehow engaged in the arts in an active way. And I think that for me, the question of how early or when this all began is inseparable from how and why did I keep going. I think if you have children, as I do, you know that a lot of them, they get a lot of signals to kind of become more serious as time goes on. And my parents were not so interested in those signals, quite honestly. And they encouraged my creativity for a long time, perhaps longer than they should have. So I think I was allowed to pursue it without feeling like I had an imperative to knuckle down in a different way and be serious about something else specific. So A Piece of the World is the story of the relationship between the artist Andrew Wyeth and the subject of his best-known painting, Christina's World, which hangs at the Museum of Modern Art. And for the people who don't know, it's a woman in a pink dress sitting in a field, sort of slightly bleak painting, egg tempera. So it looks like oil, very fine, finely detailed. And there's this gray house in the distance that's quite forbidding. And I had grown up about an hour and a half from where that was painted. And we had this sort of family relationship with the Wyeths. The Wyeths came to Maine all the time. And so my parents, when we moved to Maine, they were sort of culture vultures, and we explored all these different aspects of the state, the art and culture of the state. And so I knew about it for a long time. And also, obviously, my name is Christina. So I had all these resonances with it. And eventually, a few years ago, I stumbled on this story, this idea, and it just took root and then became an imperative for me to tell. There were a lot of reasons that I felt compelled to tell the story as I knew it, as closely to the details as I could, because the Wyeth family, many of my novel characters are actually real people who still walk the earth. So I felt that I needed to, as much as possible, be respectful of that. The story of Christina Olson, the brutal details of her life, which was hard, were also so fascinating. I mean, she was descended from the presiding judge of the Salem witch trials, and this sort of family history of witchcraft and the occult is woven through their own understanding of who they are and their relationship to the world. So, like, no writer could ask for a better setup. So I felt very lucky. The more I researched, the more I understood how rich and complicated the story already was. It became a sort of philosophical meditation on what it means to be alive for me. As I was writing it, I realized I was trying to get at how people find joy in constrained circumstances. In prison, for example, or when your options are limited. Christina Olson was physically disabled. She became more so over time. Her chances of us sort of leaving this remote point in Maine lessened. She never ended up leaving. And yet, I do believe her life was joyful. And how does that happen? What kind of person are you to find joy in this very stripped down existence that I think a lot of people would say isn't joyful? And so for me, understanding what she lived with, how she came to terms with her life, but also what gave her moments of bliss was really important. And I loved that journey with her. I had just come through a bad year where I had a terrible illness and my mother died within the same 12-month period, and it was very hard and difficult. And I think I drew on that as I was creating this character, and things had seemed very bleak for a while. And so it gave me an opportunity to really explore what this woman who, from the outside, I think looks like life has sort of thrown all of these terrible things at her, what she did to get through it. A lot of people ask me what she thought of the painting. My interpretation or understanding is that she actually really liked it. She kind of liked being a celebrity also. Eventually people started coming to the farm, and the only time she didn't really like that is when she woke up one morning and two people were standing over her asking her if she was the woman in the painting. Because the door was open, they never locked anything, it was just out there, you know, in the middle of a field. So I guess what I would ask her is, did she feel that he captured her essence? I felt that he did. And she said that in various ways. But someone at an event the other day was saying that at one point she said something like, "It's really not me." And I think she said a few contradictory things. And I'd like to ask her about that. So the novel that I come back to over and over is Madame Bovary by Flaubert. It was published in the mid-19th century. He was so rigorous about story, language, plot. He both empathized with Emma Bovary, who's a very unsympathetic character on some levels, many levels, and he also saw her with such clarity. And for me, that combination is so magical, and I'm always inspired when I read it, and I think it taught me to be rigorous. When you read his journals and what he wrote as he was writing that novel, you see how much time and effort he spent, and it makes you understand how important it is to revise over and over again, to pay attention to every word, and I think that really changed my life.